How do trees access the internet? They log in.
Tell me another joke.
What do you call a belt made of watches? A waste of time. Did you hear about the snowman that got upset when the sun came out? He had a total meltdown.
What's the weather? Hey Google, tell me the weather.
It's 31 and partly cloudy. Today, it'll be cloudy, with a high of 34 and a low of 30. Due to current wind conditions, it feels like it's 20.
How the fuck do you know what it feels like? I don't know. Hey Google, what can you do?
You can say, play some music on YouTube Music, or, what's the weather today?
Play some music on YouTube Music. SLC Draco. Ooh. Hey Google, play SLC Draco.
Alright, here's a YouTube playlist called SLC.
Draco. Got it.
Care instructions for my Gatsby.
My gazpacho.
Mr. Henry Chicken.
Mr. Dirty Boy.
Miss Attention.
For beef, short for beef.
That's
Mel likes
Cardi
dressing up to go
B.
out. He has more outfit than his daddy.
Jay-Z, that's...
Henry loves to lick.
I really hope you're okay with that.
He only likes to be touched on his head. Please do.
No. Hey Google, close all apps.
To close an app, swipe up to the middle of the screen, then swipe up on the app. To close all apps, swipe up to the middle of the screen, then swipe to the far...
That's... the fuck, man? It's not how this phone works. Google Assistant. Hey, Google. Hey, Google. Hi, how can I help?
Try saying, play some music on YouTube Music, or, what's the weather today?
Hey Google, what's the latest news?
Here's the latest news.
Hey Google, tell me the latest news.
Here's the latest news. From Reuters TV, U.S., at 9:55 a.m. today.
Your Reuters news update will begin after this message.
This is real-time business. Here's Sarah Ellenson, EY's FinTech and Payment Strategy Leader on the consumer payment landscape.
People want to spend, but they're going to be looking for alternative payments and methods to do that. For banks, they need to get creative and think about how do they meet that customer demand.
EY Financial Services can help you stay focused on the future of financial services, one that is stronger, fairer, and more sustainable. For more insights, go to ey.com.
And now, with round-the-clock updates from Reuters journalists, here are today's top stories. The founder of the far-right Oath Keepers is convicted of sedition conspiracy.
I don't think anybody should be spending any time with Nick Fuentes. He has...
Why is it so dark?
This is Reuters Now. The founder of the far-right U.S. militia group, the Oath Keepers, was found guilty of seditious conspiracy on Tuesday. It's the highest profile conviction so far in last year's deadly January 6th Capitol attack, and took 3 days of jury deliberations to reach. The verdict against Stewart Rhodes, who wears an eye patch after accidentally shooting himself decades ago, is a major win for federal prosecutors. Rhodes was convicted on 2 other charges and acquitted on 2. Outside the courthouse, his lawyer called the verdicts a mixed bag.
We certainly are thankful for the not guilty verdicts that Mr. Rhodes received. We're disappointed with the guilty verdict.
Prosecutors accused Rhodes of plotting to use force to block Congress from certifying President Joe Biden's election victory over Donald Trump. Rhodes, who testified in his own defense, told the jury he had no plan to storm the Capitol and did not learn that some of his fellow Oath Keepers had breached the building until after the riot had ended. The Yale Law School educated former Army paratrooper and disbarred attorney is one of the most prominent defendants of the roughly 900 charged so far in connection with the Capitol attack. One of Rhodes' 4 co-defendants, Kelly Meggs, was also found guilty of seditious conspiracy, while the 3 others were acquitted of the charge. Among the multiple charges, all 5 were convicted of obstructing an official proceeding. The 2 charges each carry a sentence of up to 20 years in prison. A number of other Oath Keepers and members of another right-wing group, the Proud Boys, are also due for trial on seditious conspiracy charges in December.
I don't think anybody should be spending any time with Nick Fuentes. He has no place in this Republican Party.
GOP House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy on Tuesday condemned a white nationalist who dined last week with former President Donald Trump. These were McCarthy's first public comments about Trump's dinner with far-right activist Nick Fuentes and the rapper Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, at the president's Mar-a-Lago resort, a meeting drawing widespread criticism. The Republican House leader said Fuentes had no place in the GOP.
The president can have meetings with who he wants. I don't think anybody, though, should have a meeting with Nick Fuentes, and his views are nowhere within the Republican Party or within this country itself.
Fuentes has been described as a white supremacist by the U.S. Justice Department. The Anti-Defamation League, which tracks extremists, says Fuentes once jokingly denied the Holocaust and that he compared Jews burnt in concentration camps to cookies in an oven. Ye has also drawn widespread criticism and seen the loss of multi-million-dollar sponsorship deals over anti-Semitic statements and tweets threatening Jewish people. Trump, in a message on his Truth social media site, said he met with Ye and, quote, "We got along great. He expressed no anti-Semitism, and I appreciated all the nice things he said about me."
From Fox News at 2:06 p.m. today.
It's currently 4:20. Are you gonna play? What's going on? Pause. Play. Fox News
Intervention
Radio.
on a fast track. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News. President Biden urging the Senate to move quickly after the House voted to block a rail strike next week.
After a bipartisan majority in the House approved a resolution imposing a tentative labor agreement between rail companies and unions, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre is pressing the Senate to do the same quickly.
The rail shutdown would have a grinding effect on our economy.
The measure preventing a strike likely will need at least 60 votes to advance in the Senate. Both parties are expressing concerns over congressional intervention.
Our team is going to continue to work on that to make sure that we avert this.
The House did pass a separate measure giving rail workers 7 additional days of paid sick leave. That has been a key sticking point in labor talks.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. House Democrats pick a new leadership team with New York Congressman Hakeem Jeffries at the top. He will be minority leader when the new Republican majority takes over in January.
Jeffries says he's willing to work with the other side to find common ground.
Our commitment is always to extend the hand of partnership whenever and wherever possible.
Jeffries says they will push back against what they call extremism. The leadership also says the caucus will continue to protect individual freedoms and health care in the new Congress.
Fox's Ryan Schmelz in Washington. Jeffries the first person of color to hold the top leadership post for either party in the House or Senate. The Fed chief getting much of the credit for a big rally on Wall Street late in the day after Jay Powell signaled in a speech that slower and smaller rate hikes may be coming after a
string of 4 3/4-point increases, fueling recession concerns. The Dow finishing up 737 points, the S&P up more than 3%, the NASDAQ gaining more than 4%. America is listening to Fox News. Shared grief at the University of Idaho, holding a candlelight vigil tonight for 4 slain students found stabbed to death in an off-campus house more than 2 weeks ago.
The shock and brutality of the November 13th murders clearly having a sweeping emotional impact on students across this state and the country.
Fox's Christina Coleman in Moscow, Idaho, where some on campus and in the community remain on edge. There have been no arrests made or suspects named.
I personally live pretty close to where it happened, and I live by myself, and it's kind of terrifying. Like every night, it gets like really dark here early.
Students have been given the option to finish the semester remotely. State police continue a stepped-up presence as the investigation continues. They have called it a targeted attack. U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland just announcing that the Justice Department is appointing a third-party manager for the Jackson, Mississippi water system after a boil water notice over the summer that followed long-standing problems.
As we work to fulfill our responsibility to keep the American people safe, to protect civil rights, we will continue to prioritize cases like this one that will have the greatest impact on communities most burdened by environmental harm.
The Environmental Protection Agency is looking into whether Mississippi officials discriminated against Jackson by refusing to fund water system improvements. A setback in court for cities trying to force streaming services to pay cable operator fees. The Ohio Supreme Court ruling that Netflix and Hulu are not video service providers and don't have to pay those fees to local governments because they stream on public internet without physically installing equipment in public rights-of-way. A Cleveland suburb argued they should face the fees because their internet content is delivered over cables and wires. The court also siding with the company's argument it's really up to the state Commerce Department, not a lawsuit. Lisa Brady, this is Fox News.
Last bit was actually interesting. Wow.
From today's show at 5:47 a.m. today.
Let's get to our 7:30 headlines. A guilty verdict yesterday for the founder of the Oath Keepers militia group stemming from the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. A federal jury found Stewart Rhodes and one associate guilty of seditious conspiracy in a case that involved a rarely used Civil War-era statute. The charge carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Rhodes' attorneys said they plan to appeal that conviction.
China's former leader, Jiang Zemin, who came to power after the Tiananmen Square protests, has died at the age of 96. Chiang was a surprise choice to lead a divided Communist Party after the turmoil back in 1989. He saw China through history-making changes, including a revival of market-oriented reforms. His death comes at a turbulent time in China. Protests against that country's zero-COVID policy have erupted across China, and some demonstrators are calling on current President Xi Jinping to step down.
New aerial videos show Hawaii's Mauna Loa volcano spewing fountains of lava and sending glowing streams across its surface. Look at this. The volcano began erupting on Sunday for the first time since 1984, ending its longest quiet period in recorded history.